Jamie Roeske is a joint MSc MD student in the Biomedical Engineering program, specializing in medical imaging. As an only child, Jamie grew up with little exposure to infants and young children. Looking to gain new skills, Jamie began volunteering at the Alberta Children's Hospital during her undergraduate degree at UCalgary. Her experience volunteering with infants in the neonatal follow-up clinic developed her deep admiration for the resilience of pediatric patients, the strength of their families, and the positive environment cultivated by staff. During her undergrad, Jamie's love of pediatrics motivated her to found and lead multiple child health initiatives in Calgary, including the UCalgary chapter of Heart for Heart, a nonprofit that funds life-saving surgeries for children with congenital heart disease in developing countries. Jamie graduated with her Bachelor's of Science in Neuroscience in 2022 and worked as an administrative clerk at the Alberta Children's Hospital before starting her master's degree. Under supervision of Dr. Catherine Lebel, Jamie's research uses magnetic resonance imaging, or MRI, to characterize brain development in typically developing children and adolescents. Jamie competed in the 2023 3-minute thesis competition, winning second place and People's Choice Awards. Her research and presentation skills have also been recognized through awards at 6 other UCalgary conferences. As a member of the Leaders in Medicine Physician Scientist Trainee Program, Jamie will start medical school in 2025 after defending her master's thesis. When she's not at the Alberta Children's Hospital, Jamie can be found with her nose buried in a fantasy novel, laser engraving orders for a small business she runs with her partner, or improving her golf game. Please welcome Jamie.
Thank you, Aliza. Now, good afternoon, everyone. I would like to start by asking for a show of hands of who here has ever been a teenager. Okay, shocking. No, that's not too surprising. Now, I'd like you to take a moment and think of a time when you did something risky as a teen. I know I can sure think of a few things I did. Now, I'd like you to raise your hand if, after doing something risky, you were ever reminded, maybe by a concerned parent, that your brain isn't fully developed until your 20s. A few. All right. My master's research at the University of Calgary is working to confirm that this is not just a myth spread by worried parents, but a fact that can be backed up by science. Now, all of our brains in this room today have 2 important regions, the amygdala, which you see in green, and the prefrontal cortex, which is shown in blue. Now, the amygdala is involved in emotional processing, while the prefrontal cortex is critical for complex cognition and decision-making. These 2 regions are connected by white matter tracks, which are kind of like highways that move information through the brain. Now, in fully developed adults, we expect that the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex talk to each other regularly. However, this conversation may be one-sided in the brains of young teens. Now, my research is inspired by the developmental mismatch hypothesis, which is the idea that the amygdala develops before the prefrontal cortex. This might create a critical period during adolescence where teens have a fully developed amygdala that sends a lot of signals to the prefrontal cortex, but a less developed prefrontal cortex that sends fewer signals back. Additionally, the white matter tracks connecting these regions may not be fully developed during adolescence, further limiting communication between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. This might explain why teens make risky and emotion-driven decisions. Now, there's also lots of previous literature that shows that females actually engage in less risk-taking behavior that peaks before it does in males. This makes me wonder, does the maturational timing talked about in the developmental mismatch hypothesis appear in both females and males? Now, to answer these questions, I study the development of the amygdala, the prefrontal cortex, and the white matter paths that connect them in typically developing females and males. To do this, I use magnetic resonance imaging, or MRI, to visualize the brains of children and adolescents. So as Eliza alluded to, this can be really tricky, especially with wiggly kiddos who have a lot of energy. So our team at the Alberta Children's Hospital doesn't just put them in an MRI scanner, we actually send them to space using our rocket ship. Using our rocket ship themed MRI, we have obtained over 600 MRI scans from 148 typically developing children and adolescents, ranging in age from 2 all the way up to 17 years of age. Half of my sample is female, and the other half is male. And what I've done is I've measured the structure of the amygdala, the prefrontal cortex, and their connecting white matter tracts in females and males separately. Now, what we see is that in males, the developmental mismatch hypothesis is correct. We see that the amygdala develops from early childhood to late childhood, while the prefrontal cortex undergoes change from childhood all the way towards the end of adolescence. We also see that the white matter tracts connecting these regions develop from 2 all the way up to 17 years of age. What's interesting, though, is that we don't see these same trends in females. In females, we see that the prefrontal cortex and the white matter tracts connecting these regions stop developing before they do in males, which suggests that females actually mature in these regions earlier than males. This might explain why females engage in less risk-taking behavior that peaks before it does in males. Now, my research is exciting and it's important for 2 main reasons. First of which, it can help us understand development. By studying the physical changes that are happening inside of our brain, we can go from viewing our teenage years as unexplainable years of chaos that we would maybe like to forget, to viewing them as a critical and natural period of development where we are learning how to live with adult-like systems beginning to operate inside of our brains. Second, my work can help improve care for children. So while my research looks at typically developing children and adolescents, future work can look at these same regions in those with neurodevelopmental and mental health disorders. This work would help us understand how brain disorders affect brain development and how healthcare professionals can better support children with them. So, I challenge you. The next time that you have a teenager in your life that does something risky, take a breath and remind yourself that their amygdala and prefrontal cortex will catch up to each other, just like ours did. Thank you.
Great presentation, Jamie. We have a couple questions for you today. What are some challenges of scanning infants, children, and adolescents for research?
This is a great question. There are definitely some challenges, and Eliza alluded to these, but I would say that the 2 biggest challenges are probably overcoming fear and dealing with motion. So going inside of this massive scanner that you've never seen before and which makes quite a bit of noise can be really intimidating for kids. So we try and mitigate this through a few different avenues. The first of which is that we make it look like a rocket ship, so hopefully these kids get excited about that. We also have a mock scanner set up at the Alberta Children's Hospital, which can give kids and their families the opportunity to come in, lay down in it, get familiar with what the setup looks like and what the rocket ship looks like. We also have a really cool storybook about Pluto the bear and his trip to space, which we give families the opportunity to read at home before the scan, and sometimes we reiterate once kids come in. Another thing is we give kids the opportunity to watch movies and TV shows inside of the scanner, which is a lot of fun and helps them stay still. And families, particularly parents, can often go in and either lay in the scanner with the kids, depending on their age, or sit nearby and keep a hand on them. So having the parents there, and especially watching the movies and TV, helps deal with both the fear aspect as well as with motion.
So you mentioned that kids can watch TV in the scanner. Very important question. What is the most requested show or movie?
This is the $1 million question, and I would argue is one of the most exciting parts of scanning is getting to see what kids request. For younger ages, it's got to be Paw Patrol. it's a favorite, and I know more about Chase and Marshall and Ryder and all those folks than I ever thought I would. For some of the older kids, we also get a lot of Frozen, which I know if it was me in there watching it, I would probably be like singing and dancing, but these kids manage to really focus on it when they're in there. And we also get a lot of very specific requests. So a few weeks ago, we had a almost 3-year-old come in and specifically request to watch the Reputation portion of Taylor Swift's Eras Tour movie while he was in the scanner. So it's really fun to see kids get excited about it and enjoy themselves when they're in there.
Amazing. You've shown us today that your research will improve our understanding of brain development and how it influences behavior. What broader implications do you think your work might have?
That is a great question. So I would say that there are 3 main avenues where my work is applicable and I think will be meaningful. The first of which is healthcare. So as I mentioned, future work and specifically even a side project that I'm working on that basically replicates what I've done here in children and adolescents with prenatal alcohol exposure can help us understand how the developmental timing of their brain regions or the brain regions of other atypically developing populations are different. And this can help us both humanize these atypically developing patterns and to open up discussion about it, as well as educate medical professionals on how they can better support these individuals. Another avenue is education. I think it's really important to understand how the brain develops and how that affects behavior. I think that can help education people involved in the education system to better interact with kids and to also empathize with them. And I'd say another kind of third avenue is the justice system. So you might not immediately think about this, but brain development research is actually really critical for educating the judicial system, specifically when it comes to making laws about children and adolescents. So this work and understanding how their brains differ from adults is critical for ensuring they are treated fairly. Thank you.